Episode 10, Swarm of the Centauri. This episode starts with Fluttershy at the edge of the Everfree Forest collecting flowers as she is trying to help Ponyville prepare for Princess Celestia's visit. I'm Count Lurchalot and this is Lukewarm Television. Before we begin, I feel I should mention that this was the first episode of this show that I ever watched upon deciding to give it a chance. Fluttershy is about to head back when she discovers a strange creature. Although an animal lover, this is one Fluttershy has never seen and is immediately intrigued. She offers the creature some food, but they have a bigger appetite than anticipated. Wanting her friends to see this, Fluttershy decides to take them back to Ponyville. We then cut to Twilight, who like in the first episode is supervising preparations for Celestia's arrival and making sure everything is ready. This eventually leads her to Sugarcube Corner, where she sees Pinkie is making it difficult for her employers/landlords to make enough food for the visit. Fluttershy enters and presents the creature to them, which appears to have tripled in numbers. Though Fluttershy can't explain where the others came from, Twilight offers to take one as she finds them adorable. Fluttershy offers the other to Pinkie, but she seems disgusted by the creature and even appears to recognize them as she refers to them as parasprites. They question Pinkie on what she knows, but she leaves, insisting she has to find a trombone. While they are confused by Pinkie's antics, they brush it off as Pinkie being her usual crazy self. We then cut to Rarity, who is helping to make costumes for the event and torture poor Rainbow Dash in the process. Twilight arrives to check on the preparations and also shows them the creature, which again appears to have tripled in numbers. They again don't question why this has happened, and both Rainbow Dash and Rarity ask if they can have one. Pinkie arrives to ask if any of them have seen an accordion, but they ignore her as they are too preoccupied by the animals. Twilight goes to bed that night thinking everything will be fine, but she wakes up the next morning to discover that her home is completely infested by the creatures. They decide to round them up and get rid of them before the princess arrives, which will happen in only a few hours. Rainbow Dash wakes up to the same problem, as her home is also now overrun by the creatures. While Rarity's home is also overrun by the creatures, she's surprisingly unbothered by this because they are actually proving to be quite useful helping around her boutique. However, then she sees how they reproduce and immediately decides to get rid of them. She manages to round them all up in a saddlebag and runs into Pinkie when she heads outside. Pinkie tries to get Rarity to help her look for more instruments, but Rarity brushes her off, thinking Pinkie is simply in the middle of a scavenger hunt. If she had stopped to listen, she would have realized Pinkie was actually doing the most good for Ponyville out of all of them. Rarity runs into Twilight, who has also managed to round up the creatures into a saddlebag. At this point, they see Rainbow Dash having a more comical issue with them. They decide to head to Fluttershy as she knows the most about animals. Sadly, they have also infested Fluttershy's cottage, and despite the connection she has with animals, not even Fluttershy can get them under control. Realizing the situation is dire, Twilight starts to panic over what will happen when Princess Celestia arrives, which leads to a pretty funny dream scene. Applejack arrives, having been asked to bring a cart full of apples, which the creatures make quick work of. Remembering Applejack's herding abilities from episode 4, Twilight believes they can use this to lead the creatures out of Ponyville. Applejack agrees to help and gives everyone instructions on what they need to do. She'll herd from the back, while Rarity and Twilight keep them contained at the front, and Fluttershy and Rainbow Dash keep them contained on top. Working together, they round them up and start herding them out of Ponyville. All is going well, and then Pinkie turns up asking them to stop what they are doing to help her find some maracas and a tuba. Unfortunately, they refuse to follow her, believing she's not doing anything productive. If they only listened to Pinkie, this would have been resolved much sooner. Pinkie leaves, and the remaining 5 characters successfully herd the creatures back into the forest. They head back so they can keep preparing for Princess Celestia's visit. Unfortunately, there appears to be another infestation in Fluttershy's cottage, to which Fluttershy admits she kept one, which I feel they should have suspected earlier, considering how much of an animal lover Fluttershy is. Knowing they don't have time to round them up again, Rainbow Dash decides to take matters into her own hooves by using the weather. Using a tornado, Rainbow Dash quickly gathers them up, and all their problems seem solved. Unfortunately, Pinkie arrives at the worst possible time with Symbols, and while she was generally being the most productive in this episode, she causes more problems for them here. The Symbols fly into the tornado, and Rainbow Dash loses control. Thankfully, those Symbols didn't hit Rainbow Dash, or this episode would have been very gory. The creatures escape and head to Ponyville. The others scold Pinkie Pie for ruining their efforts. Pinkie tries to explain that she's doing work to save Ponyville, and they would understand how if they just stopped and listened. Unfortunately, they continue to ignore her and head towards Ponyville. The creatures arrive in Ponyville, and although the residents aren't initially bothered by them, they quickly show their true colors and start devouring all the food in sight. Twilight attempts to control the situation by casting a spell to stop them eating the food. This backfires humorously as they start devouring everything that isn't food, which unsurprisingly causes even more problems. They start splitting up to save their properties, but the creatures are now devouring Rarity's boutique, and they manage to eat the entire barn at Sweet Apple Acres. Back at Twilight's library, they start eating all the words out of the books. How they do this, I have no idea. I feel anything crazy that happens in this show can just be explained as being magic. That's what I assume it is anyway. With her options exhausted, Twilight takes one of the creatures to Zecora, which makes me happy because, as I said before, I love zebras, so any episode that includes Zecora makes me happy. Twilight interrupts Zecora, who's in the middle of meditation, and asks Zecora if she knows what these creatures are. Zakura confirms what Pinky said before, that they are indeed parasprites. She then tells Twilight plainly that if these creatures have infested Ponyville, they're doomed. As Twilight rushes back to Ponyville, she sees Celestia is on her way. Also, I just want to pause and ask, why does Celestia need a group of stallions to fly her to Ponyville? She has wings, she could fly, why doesn't she just fly herself? Also, I wanted to explain this before, but you'll have probably noticed Celestia has both a unicorn horn and wings like a Pegasi. This gives her the abilities of both, and the type of pony she is called an alicorn, a term I wasn't aware of until the end of Season 3. I just assumed she was a winged unicorn. At any rate, Twilight gets back to Ponyville and tries to take control of the situation, and has zero success. Pinky then arrives playing a variety of instruments at the same time. At first, Twilight gets angry because they're in the middle of a crisis, but then she starts noticing that the parasprites are actually following Pinky out of Ponyville. They finally realize Pinky wasn't actually fooling around. She knew what the parasprites were and how to get rid of them, but the rest of them were too stubborn to listen. Celestia arrives as Pinky is leading the parasprites out of Ponyville, and after greeting Twilight and the others, she notices Pinky leading the parasprites away. She questions what is happening, but brushes it off when she realizes how adorable the parasprites are, and concludes Pinky was merely performing in a parade they had prepared for her. I just want to pause again and say, I'm amazed Celestia doesn't know what parasprites are. She's been ruling for over 1,000 years. How is she not aware of every living creature in Equestria? Anyway, Celestia reveals she can't stay as a separate infestation has broken out in the city of Philadelphia, and she has to leave to take care of it. If you haven't guessed already, most of the places in this universe are horse puns with real-world cities, and you'll hear many more down the line. Before she leaves, Celestia asks if Twilight has a friendship lesson she can give her. Looking at Pinky for inspiration, Twilight manages to come up with a very meaningful message on the spot, that a solution can come from where you least expect it, and that it's a good idea to stop and listen to your friends, even when their solutions don't always make sense. Celestia thanks Twilight for her report, and leaves just as Pinky finishes getting rid of the parasprites, which is why she spent the entire episode looking for the instruments so she could get rid of them. They apologize to Pinky and thank her for saving the town. Unfortunately, when they head back, they realize they have a lot of cleaning up to do. Pinky then ends the episode with what I can only assume is a fourth wall break. Like I said at the start, this was the first episode of this show I ever saw, so it was a real treat coming back to it a decade later. For me, the best thing about this episode is that its message can be applied rather easily to real life. That being that you might have the solution to a problem, but the people around you might be too stubborn to listen, and it's not until you solve the problem that they can understand what you have to bring. I feel this helps teach the viewers to always listen to the people around you, because you never know what they might be able to provide. Until next time, thanks for watching, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you at the next review.